All right, we are finishing up the second day of the field study lab after being outside. You are first going to fill in the organisms, the large organisms, and how many you found in the entire field as a whole class. This was the whole big field. Then, in your group, fill in how many small organisms could fit in your little meter by meter square. And then you are going to write down the producers that you saw out in the field, all the different kinds of producers. We brought in 1/4 of a meter from the field. So fill this in right here. Okay. After that, you use what you just put into that table and propose one possible food chain from the organisms we found. Make sure the arrows are going the right way. Draw it in for me right there. Then you're going to make a food web of every organism out in that field, out in that ecosystem. It must include every possible energy transfer represented by an arrow. So Google it, look it up, anything that can eat anything, put it on that web. Then, if you need to pause and do that, or at any point, go ahead and pause. After that, you're going to create a trophic level pyramid based off of this web. Use the web and the arrows to figure out which level that they go in. The pyramid has to have every organism that we found. Organisms that could be in multiple levels, so a primary or a secondary consumer, secondary or a tertiary, has to go into the highest possible one. It would be good for you to label your levels on your chain, web, and pyramid. After you have completed those items, you can ask to go and mass your grass. You're going to go put it on the scale. Might have to do little bit by little bit. And you are going to write that number right here. This was an example. You'll put the grams right here that you got. All right. After that, you will then come back and sit down and do all these calculations. Okay. Next step is you're going to try to fill out these numbers on the sides of your pyramid. Okay. We're going to look at what we actually found at each trophic level and what we were expecting to find based off of our 10% rule. Okay. In order to do that and fill out these, you have to go up to the table. All right. So, as an example, we had 4 doves. Okay. We're trying to find the mass of everything in the field. So you're going to need the mass of one of those 4 doves. If you go to the posting, the green dot right here, Lab Field Study Organism Masses, this is what we've found so far. Doves are now at the top, 171 grams. You're going to go back here, or you can Google it, 171 grams. Okay, that was the mass of 1. We found 4. So how are you going to get the total mass of the entire field? You're going to multiply those 2 numbers together. Okay, that's going to give you 684 grams of doves in the entire field. Okay, do that for all the organisms that we saw as a whole class, because all those organisms are in your food web and pyramid. So we have to calculate all of those numbers right there. Alrighty. Now we're going to do you can pause it and do that. Small organisms, each group is going to be different. If you had 15 ants, you're going to need the mass of 1 first. So you're going to go back over here, find ants. If it's not on here and you can find it and add it on here, you sure could. So we don't have to keep looking them up. 0.005 grams. Okay, so if that's a mass of 1, and we have 15 of them, you take this column times this column to get the total mass that you observed. That's going to be 0.075 grams. But now that was just in your one little square, your one little meter by meter. So we have to take your meter and multiply it by the number of meters in the whole field. In order to do that, you have to know the whole field. You could go on over to Google and then see in the bottom right-hand corner, it gives you 50 meters down there. I just used a paper and I measured it on the picture. And so it ended up being 45,000 meters squared. So I take the mass in one square times 45,000 meters squared in the whole field. So that's going to give us the mass of the whole field of ants, which is going to end up being 3,375 grams of ants for the entire field, because we've now calculated the entire field. Do that for all of the organisms you found in your square as a group. You can pause. Next is your producer. Okay, you wrote down your number. Say you had 5.6 grams, and now that was in your tiny little fourth of a meter. A fourth of a meter. So in order to get the whole meter, how are you going to find that number? Going to multiply it by 4. So that's going to give this example 22.4 grams in the meter in your big square. Now we want the whole field again. The whole field. So we go up and we take our big number again and we multiply it times 45,000, because there's that many meters in a whole field. And that's going to give you 1,008,000 grams of producer in your whole field, because we've now calculated our whole field. Okay, now you're going to take these numbers and put them on the pyramid. Okay, so let's start with our producer. This number right here is very important. Let's go down and do this side first. So this is our 10% rule. You're going to put that number down here at the bottom, 1,008,000 grams of producer. Okay, using our 10% rule, we just knock off a 0 each time. So now I've got 100,000 grams at this next level. And then I've got 10,000 grams at this level, 1,000 grams, 100 grams, and then 10 grams at those levels. That's what we are expecting to find based off of the 10% rule. Okay, because that's our number of for the grass. Okay, over on the left side, we are going to calculate what we actually found. That was the whole point of the whole table up there and all those calculations. So this number is going to be the same. So that number goes there. But now we're going to have to add up the organisms at each level. So let's say I only had ants and doves right here. I would go up to my ants and my doves. My ants were this many grams. My doves were this many grams. I'm going to add those together because that was the grams in the whole field. So that's going to be roughly 4,000 grams. 4,000 grams. Now you're probably going to have a few more here, but whatever it is, you got to add them all up and put your total number right there. Okay, let's say you have 2 organisms here or 3. You're going to go up here. So you see whatever you put in that level, You go up and you add up, say it was this one and this one and this one. You would add up those total masses for the whole field, and then you'd come down here and write that number here. If there was only one coyote, you would write the number of grams for that one coyote in the whole field right there. Okay, last thing, this question down here. Propose an explanation for why these two sets of numbers are different. The difference between what we found and what we expected. Now, don't tell me that we used the 10% rule for this one over here, and then we calculated it over here. Yes, that's exactly what we did. But why were those numbers different? Why was this one, for what we actually found, 44,000, and it was supposed to be 100,000? If your numbers are getting smaller as you go up, that's the important thing. You usually come pretty close to that. But why is it not an exact, perfect 10% when we went out in the field and calculated it? And then you're done.